Did you receive a PPP loan? In this video, what I'm going to go over is how do you report the PPP loan and the related expenses on your 2020 tax return. Hi everyone, Stephen Lee here with Simply Tax. I'm a CPA based out of Chicago, Illinois, and on this channel, if this is your first time visiting, welcome. What you'll find are helpful tax tips for both individuals and business owners, as well as economic stimulus package updates. So you don't want to forget to hit the subscribe button below so you don't miss out on any of those updates. All right, so let's get right into the topic of this video. How do you report the PPP loan and the related expenses on your 2020 tax return? Okay. What we do know for certain is that PPP loans are not taxable income, so you should not include them in gross income. But the question then is, can you deduct for tax purposes the expenses incurred using PPP funds? Just as a quick recap, the eligible expenses to have PPP loans forgiven include four things, right? We have payroll, we have utilities, we have mortgage interest, and then we have rent payments, okay? So those are the four eligible expenses you're going to include if you received a PPP loan within the forgiveness application, okay? The answer is very clear. The IRS this past November 18th released another confirmation on how they view PPP loans as well as the expenses using PPP funds. So going back to that question, can you deduct for tax purposes the expenses incurred using PPP loan funds? The answer is no, okay? You'll need to make a tax adjustment for those expenses you plan to have forgiven using those PPP funds. So basically, let's say you do plan, you used up all your PPP funds and you used it using the standard of 70-30, right? 70% used for payroll, 30% for other things like utilities, mortgage interest, and rent payments. If you qualify for that and you used up all those funds within the 24 or 8-week cover period, but most PPP loan recipients will probably be using the 24-week period, the cover period. If you have a reasonable expectation that your PPP loan will be forgiven, you should not include those expenses on your 2020 tax return. Once again, you have to make a tax adjustment for your 2020 tax return. So let's say, for example, you use 100% of your PPP funds, okay, in 2020 for payroll, right? We know that, and you use them all within that 24-week cover period, you know, you're going to have that loan forgiven. So what you have to do for tax purposes is A, do not include the PPP loan as gross income, and B, you have to back out and you have to add back almost those eligible PPP payroll expenses that you're using to have your PPP loan forgiven. So let's use a numerical example here. Let's say you received a PPP loan for $50,000 and you used up all $50,000 for payroll in 2020 within that 24-week covered period. Okay? And what we know is that you're going to have that $50,000 forgiven. Okay? What you have to do for 2020 for your tax return is you cannot include $50,000 worth of payroll expenses that you use for that with those PPP funds. Okay? So you have to add that back almost. Okay? So that tax adjustment has to be made in 2020. The IRS is very clear. They sent another confirmation, like I said, back on November 18th, and I'm going to include that link and that pronouncement, that revenue procedure in the information section below so you can take a look at the finer details of that. Okay? Going a little bit more specifically into what the IRS is saying is that whether or not you apply for forgiveness in 2020, so some of our clients and some of you as well probably already submitted your forgiveness application for your PPP loans because your bank was accepting them. But irregardless, the IRS says that even if you applied in 2020 or 2021, irregardless, and even if the decision to have those loans to be forgiven occurs in 2020 or 2021, the tax adjustment has to be made in the year 2020. So A, once again, do not include PPP loans as gross income, and B, do not include the expenses like payroll on your 2020 tax return as a deduction. okay? So another code section that the IRS cites is from the tax code is section 265A1. Okay, this states that it disallows a deduction for otherwise eligible expenses to the extent the payment of those eligible expenses is allocable to tax-exempt income in the form of a reasonably expected covered loan forgiven. Okay, that's exactly what we're dealing with here, right? The PPP loan is going to be tax exempt, right? We're not going to include that on our tax return. So the eligible expenses to that tax exempt income, what you used it for, like payroll, rent, utilities, or mortgage interest, should not be deductible, is not allowed as an expense or a deductible expense. Therefore, once again, what this means is if you have a reasonable expectation of reimbursement in the form of loan forgiveness, you should not include the expenses as a deduction on your 2020 tax return. Once again, you should not include those expenses on your 2020 tax return. Okay. Most of our clients, within our firm have used either, more than 70% of their PPP funds for payroll. So we foresee them to fully get those PPP loans fully forgiven. So what we're going to do come this tax season is follow this regulation, obviously, and we're going to have to make that tax adjustment and back out those payroll expenses, rent, utilities, mortgage interest from their tax return. Okay, this is going to be really important. If you're a business owner and you receive the PPP loan, and you have to anticipate this for your quarterly estimated tax payment. Okay, the due date there is January 15th, 2021. So when you're calculating that Q4 quarterly estimated tax payment for the 2020 year, you're going to have to add back any of those PPP funds used for those eligible expenses. Okay, so this is going to be really big for a lot of you business owners out there. Okay, so when you are calculating your Q4 estimated tax payment, remember to add back those eligible expenses because you're not going to include the PPP loan as gross income once again. Okay. The last question here is, should you apply for forgiveness now? Okay, knowing how the IRS is going to treat both the PPP loan as well as the expenses used to have that loan forgiven, should you apply now? As stated in my previous videos, my stance is still the same. We say wait before applying for forgiveness, and there are two main reasons for that. Number one, blanket forgiveness may still happen. Okay, so blanket forgiveness may still be coming, so you don't want to jump the gun and apply just yet. And then number two, we know that the banks are still waiting for that legislation to come out, right? That next stimulus package to come out, that should give more guidance in regards to PPP loans. So we know that certain banks aren't even taking applications. Also, we do know that the SBA is also making decisions and reviewing the PPP loan forgiveness applications as well. So there's no need to jump the gun just yet. And remember, PPP application or forgiveness applications are due by the instructions 10 months after the covered period. So most of you who receive PPP loans probably receive them in April or May of this year. The 10 months doesn't really run out, and the 24-week cover period really just expired last month in October for most of you, or this month in November. So if you think about it, 10 months from now is going to be July or August of next year, so next summer of 2021. So you still have a lot of time before you have to submit that forgiveness application, okay, to the banks and to the SBA. So what we recommend to all of our clients is to hold off submitting forgiveness. If you just can't wait and you want to submit your forgiveness application and your bank is taking them, go ahead and submit them. But our general rule and our recommendation is to wait, just because of the blanket forgiveness, as well as we don't know, what the SBA is planning to do. They are continuing to release further guidance in terms of the forgiveness application process. So it doesn't hurt to wait just yet. Okay. And once again, if you made it through to this part, just reiterating, when you start completing your 2020 tax return, remember, do not include PPP loans that you plan to have forgiven as gross income. And number two, do not include the expenses that you incurred in 2020 that you're planning to apply to the PPP loan forgiveness application as a deduction on your 2020 tax return. You must make that tax adjustment and back that out. okay? And make sure that your Q4 quarterly estimated tax payment also reflects that adjustment. And if you're working with a CPA, make sure they know that as well, and make sure you cover that with them during your year-end or your Q4 meeting, okay? Making sure that they've included that as an adjustment to your Q4 estimated tax payment. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching this video. If you found this video helpful, please remember to hit the like button below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, as you don't want to miss out on any more economic stimulus updates, as well as year-end tax advice for both individuals and business owners. Till next time, be safe, and I'll see you again. Bye.